For Eastern, this was a record-setting year. We, in women's basketball, took a big step forward. The last 2 years, we finished 7th in the conference, and so just barely qualified for the Lone Star Conference. We were predicted to finish about in that position in the preseason, but right from the word go, we recognized that this was going to be a special team. I didn't get a chance to do the very first game of the season when they played against a Division I school, Southern Utah, but I read the synopsis of that game and boiled down to just basically Southern Utah hit a shot at the end to win that game, or Eastern would have beaten them. Then the very next night, I did get a chance to do Eastern as they played against the University of New Mexico, and Eastern led into the third quarter of that game against a team that would prove to be very good in their conference. So when I saw them being able to battle the very talented Lady Lobos on even terms, I recognized that this was going to be a much better team. Kind of two things at play. First of all, we had a couple of young ladies come in who were new to the program and definitely helped out a lot. But also we had young ladies that just got better with a year of experience. So one thing I would say that was clearly different about women's basketball this year was the fact that we had post players that were legitimate scoring threats, and so teams could not just cover us on the perimeter as they had in the past. And basically, if they could shut down our perimeter game, they were going to defeat us. But they had to stop our inside game. If they tried to stop our inside game, we'd kick it out of the perimeter. We had girls that could knock down shots. And so Eastern, from the word go, really proved that they were going to be very successful. And here again, another game, we played against Wayland Baptist, a school that is legendarily good in NAIA basketball. And we lost to Wayland Baptist over their place, but it was a game that late in the ball game we had a lead and just couldn't hold on to it. But I knew that if we could play with Wayland Baptist at Plainview, Texas, we were definitely a squad that was going to be able to play well at home, going to be able to play well on the road. And as soon as we started playing conference games, that was apparent. Got a couple of victories on the road against the University of Texas Permian Basin and against West Texas, something that hadn't been done in 30 years. And just that let us know, yeah, this is going to be a rather good year. Won our first 2 games at home. We started out, we went through the first half of the season undefeated. We were a perfect 10-0. Started to lose some games during the second half, but still we were good enough to emerge with a 16-4 record in conference play. That gave us a conference championship. The first time we'd had a conference championship ever, because it turned out we had always looked back at 1993 and said, okay, we had a conference championship. But that was back when Lone Star Conference was split into 2 halves, and so we won the North, but when the North champion played against the South champion, we lost, and so technically this was our first conference championship. We also had another first in that we got our first ever invitation to the NCAA Division II postseason. We were in the regional round. We were in as the 6th seed, played the 3 seed, and we were only down 4 points at halftime. Had a bad third quarter, and if there was a quarter that was the downfall for Eastern, it was usually the third quarter that wound up costing us the games that we did lose. But they still played well. They definitely showed that they belong. And so for Eastern, it was a spectacularly good year in women's basketball.
Okay, I was hired at Eastern New Mexico University as a women's basketball coach in 1980-81 basketball season. Coach B.B. Lees was the athletic director at that time, and he knew my background. And he asked me if I would come in and help out with the program and see if we could get her going. So I did that, and I was here for 22 years plus a year of volunteer. So actually I was here at Eastern New Mexico for 23 years. In 1980, 81, we were the Greyhoundettes, and we were that for 2 years, and it wasn't, we didn't feel like that was a very good representation of our program. So we had a contest for a new name, and it was voted on by the student body and the bench club and other alumni, so it passed unanimously that we'd be the Zias. And that gave us our own identity, and we were all proud to be Zias, and I thought it was a great thing. And I thought we had the very best logo in the United States right there. I thought that was really a neat logo with the Zia symbol with a hound through it. So we were that for 34 years. I believe we was the Zias for 34 years, and for some unknown reason we changed to the Hounds, but all my players and myself will always be Zias.
I first started playing basketball when I was in 7th grade. My friend Nikki thought it would be cool to try, so she said, hey, let's go try out. So we tried out for basketball, and we both made it. And I didn't get to play very much. I didn't really understand the game. I mostly just spent a lot of time on the bench and a lot of time running. But I, steadily got better. I remember when I was in 8th grade, my dad told me I would probably not ever play college ball because I wasn't tall enough, and that I didn't look the part, that I had to work harder than everybody else because I wasn't quite there. So I sort of wanted to prove him wrong, show him what I could do. But I actually did not play very much my first 2 years playing. After my sophomore year, though, actually it was after my freshman year, the summer after my freshman year in high school, my sister's friend, they were a year older, they were on JV, and her uncle coached at he was a football coach at a high school across town. So we got up every morning, like at 4 o'clock in the morning, to go across town to go lift weights. They gave us this weight program. We did like weighted jump ropes and lifting and sprints and things like that. It was actually, they built it for their football players, and they would always talk to their football players about like how good we were because we were always there on time and always working hard, and they used us as an example. But we played, after we would finish lifting, we'd play 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 or 21 or whatever, on the court, half court. And at that point, I had a problem catching. I couldn't catch the ball. Like, it would always like slip off my hands or hit me in the forehead, and I had trouble with that. And there was one of the football coaches, his name was Coach Rossi. He would pull me aside, and we had like catching sessions where he would throw the ball at me like all kinds of crazy ways, like at my shins or at my head or just way out there, and I learned how to focus on the ball to catch the ball, and that's something I'm really proud of, because that was kind of a thing that that I could lean on, to catch the ball, to snag the ball. If it was anywhere close to me, it was my ball, throughout my career. But after that, my sophomore year, I played more, of course. I played a lot more. My coach then, Coach White, who was the coach that mentioned Eastern, because he played golf here, he told me that I was doing much better, but that I had the touch of an elephant. And I was so upset, and I went in the locker room and I cried, and I stopped. I was like, okay, I'm gonna fix this. So I came back out, and it changed my game. And so from then on, I could catch and I could shoot. So at that point, I had another friend who was a military brat. My dad was in the military, and she would go to the gym all the time at Lackland Air Force Base to play. There was I forget what the gym name was called, the Chaparral Gym. And she would go play, and she invited me to go play with her one time. And first of all, I was like, wow, boys, yay! No, but I ended up going there pretty regularly, and I think that helped my game a lot because, these guys are, of course, they're guys, and when you're playing with guys as a female, you're not the first one picked for the team. They're like, you, oh, are you playing? So, like, I had to learn how to be confident. I had to call next, because if I didn't call next, nobody would pick me. So I would call next, and then I'd pick people who I thought, were good, and then they'd play with me. But it really helped my game because when you're playing with guys and you're a girl, they don't want to throw you the ball, so you have to go get it. So I think it really helped my rebounding and my physical game because, I had to go get it. And the great thing about playing with guys in a pickup kind of fashion is that they don't call fouls on you because you're a girl. So yeah, I got away with a lot of stuff there. But I actually ended up, there was one point, Bo, he played for the Cavaliers. He played there one time and hit me in the head with his big elbow. And Clarissa Davis, she played, she was on the Olympic team. She actually played there one time, and the day that she played, she had a cast on her hand, and she was still killing everybody, and it was so awesome to see her that way. But it was, it was a good experience for me. And when I started looking around, I wasn't sure, if I wanted to play. Looking around at colleges, I wasn't sure if I wanted to play volleyball, or basketball. And I also, I sang in choir, so I kind of had to make a choice. And I decided that basketball was what I wanted to do. And when I visited a couple other schools, I went to the Air Force Academy, and that wasn't for me. And there were other schools in the Lone Star Conference that recruited me, but when I met Coach Moore, I was just so impressed with him that I decided that I really liked him. He was so real, and of course my sister ended up transferring from Texas Lutheran College to come here, so we got to play together, which was also a bonus. And yeah, it was just a really good experience for me.
I've had the privilege of broadcasting at Eastern New Mexico University since the spring of 1996. I started out doing the Coaches Show, which is a radio show that was a fixture of, at the time, Bergman Broadcasting. Mark and Sandy Bergman were the owners of the radio station that had the coverage of Eastern New Mexico. And I actually, for my first Coaches Show, I interviewed the head Greyhound baseball coach, Phil Claybaugh. I guess my owners liked what they heard, because they asked me after that if I would become the permanent host of the program. I was happy to do so. And then a couple of weeks later, they asked me if I'd like to broadcast Greyhound baseball. Well, baseball was my favorite sport growing up, and so I leaped at the chance to be able to do that and broadcast Greyhound baseball. And then Mark and Sandy Bergman asked me if I would become the broadcaster for all Eastern athletic contests, and so that next fall I started broadcasting Greyhound football, and then Greyhound basketball, and at the time Zia basketball, because our mascot used to be the Zia for women's sports. And then broadcasting in the spring Greyhound baseball, and I started that, like I said, back in the fall of 1996, and have been privileged to be the broadcaster ever since then. In some ways, things have changed. The system that I use is different. We're under new management. A gentleman by the name of Steve Rooney and a gentleman by the name of Duffy Moon bought Mark and Sandy out, and so it went from being Bergman Broadcasting to being Rooney Moon Broadcasting. I was very surprised that Steve and Duffy didn't bring in their own broadcaster, but for some strange reason they asked me to stay on. I was happy to do so, and so I've been able to continue to broadcast Eastern athletics. My travels have taken me as far west as San Luis Obispo, California, to broadcast Greyhound basketball. I've gone as far east as Little Rock, Arkansas. We played at the University of Central Arkansas in a football game. As far north, I'm trying to think, probably Tahlequah, Oklahoma is the farthest that I have been north. Farthest south would be Kingsville, Texas, which is pretty close to the Rio Grande as we would say in this part of the world. So I have covered a wide amount of territory. Next fall, I'm actually going to be able to go out to West Virginia, because the Greyhound football team will be playing West Liberty University, which is located in Wheeling. So I have been able to travel far afield, and thankfully my owners back in the day, Bergman Broadcasting, and the owners right now, Rooney Moon Broadcasting, they have been gracious enough to pick up the check for my transportation costs, and so wherever the Greyhounds, whether men or women, play, I get a chance to be there.
You had asked me earlier about Doc Elder and why the decision would be made to keep Doc Elder. Well, I think Doc Elder answers the question you just asked every time he hits the radio. And that is, to me, a sports broadcaster's job is to be the eyes and ears of the person that can't be there in the stands. And the reality is 95% of the community, 98% of the community can't be there in the stands. And so it's the broadcaster's job, first and foremost, to provide that experience to that person who can't be there. And sometimes that's a good experience in that you're winning and you're up and it's great and it's exciting. And sometimes it's not a good experience. Sometimes it's a slow game or the score is really tilted in the wrong direction. But a good, consummate broadcaster knows that the person listening still wants to hear what's going on. What is the next pitch? Is it a curveball? What is the next play? Is it the I formation? What is the next play on the court? Who's passing to whom? Who's going to the foul line? Even if they're down by 30 points, the person listening, the person on the other side of the radio, they still want to know what's going on. Now, do you still need to provide entertaining content in those moments when things are slow? Of course, and a good broadcaster knows how to do that without losing focus of their core job in that exact moment, and that is to be the eyes and the ears of the person who can't be there in the stands.
And welcome to Eastern New Mexico University Greyhound women's basketball. I'm Doc Holter broadcasting live from Pueblo, Colorado, where the Greyhound women are just getting set to go where no Greyhound women's basketball team has gone before, which is into the NCAA regional tournament. By Fisher, might have gotten away with a walk there. Gets the ball to a Flanagan. Flanagan swings on the wing. Gets the ball to Gabler, and there's a steal. Brandy Gomez takes the ball length of the floor, lays it up, and Eastern has the first 2 points of the ball game.
Okay. As a Zia, we won 300 games from 1980 to 2002. Well, I actually won 327 games in that period of time, but our conference record was well over 500. We made the conference tournament 14 consecutive years, and that was when only 4 teams were selected to go to the tournament. Now I think they take all but 1 now, but at one time the Lone Star Conference had 17 teams, and they had a North Division and a South Division. And the North Division was made up basically of Oklahoma schools plus 2 Arkansas schools. The South Division is what it is presently, but we'd only take 4 from each side, 4 from the North and 4 from the South, and have a playoff. So we were fortunate enough to make that 14 out of 19 years, so 14 out of 18 years, I believe. So, we had success as a Zia, and all my players are very proud to be Zias. Our first Zia game for a Lone Star Conference played in 1985, and we started at Texas A&I, which is now Texas A&M Kingsville. And we didn't know how we'd fare in the Lone Star Conference, and I was a little afraid of that because they had such a strong reputation as a conference. So we played Texas A&I, and they beat us by 5, and then we played Texas A&M Commerce our first year in. They beat us by 5. So I come home and I told Coach Lees, I said, we can compete in the Lone Star Conference, and we took it from there and did very well from that point on.
So when I was a freshman, I think basketball was really a kind of a emotional anchor for me, because I'm coming in and I'm learning all this stuff and learning relationships and all this, and basketball was really just a kind of a foundation, which was great. And my sophomore year, I remember, the volleyball girls would practice during our preseason, and I remember looking through the door of the gym and seeing them and being like, wow, I kind of miss that. So I talked to Coach Moore and I asked him if he would mind if I maybe walked on volleyball. So I ended up doing that my sophomore year. So that was fun. But as far as basketball goes, I think that playing with my sister was also very cool, and coming from home, I'm kind of I'm really close to my family, and it was, it's 8 hours, and I was ready, man, when I was leaving high school. I was so ready to get away from home, just, be on my own, but I really missed my parents, and I think being in Portales was the perfect place for me because it's, you know, it's such a small town, and it's kind of a community of, it's like a family, you know. So I had like all these surrogate parents, you know, the people that were, you know, would come to the games and ask how we were doing, and you know, there were people in town that, you know, we'd go eat dinner with, and it was like family when my parents can be here. Of course, my dad was at every game, and you knew when he was there because he was very opinionated about certain things. But it was nice, you know, to have my family there, and when they weren't able to be here, you know, my Portals family was, so that was cool. I think one of my favorite stories of when I was playing was when we were playing against, I'm not sure if it was I think I was sophomore year or junior year. We were playing against Angelo State University, and I was doing pretty well. There was a point where I was fourth leading scorer in the nation, and you know, it seemed like, you know, things were going really well, and the coach, Angelo, she had an article in the paper, and she said in the article that I was overrated, and that you know, I wasn't as good as everybody was saying, and Coach Moore, he told me this later, but he made it a point of mentioning that article to me because he knew that I would be like, I'll show her. And now that I think back, you know, about my career, like I had some I'll show them moments. Like somebody said I couldn't do it, and so I was just going to prove them wrong. And it's like, you know, playing with the guys at the gym. They weren't going to give me the ball. I was going to go get it, you know. So we played, and we ended up beating them. And I think I scored like 32 points or something. It was a really good game for me, and I think I pretty much put that to rest. But she did. She apologized. She actually apologized to Coach Moore, and she came up to me after the game, and she shook my hand and said, "Wow, you were a great player, and it was a pleasure to see you play." And it was cool. It was nice. But I think that game was also I scored the winning basket too, like on the buzzer. So yay! But it was just a really great experience, and the stuff that you carry with you, you know, when you're playing, and everybody, you know, people would tell you like, "Oh, you're learning so much about teamwork, and that's so good," and it's just sort of part of your life, you know, because you're on a team and everybody has a role, and because you don't really look at it that way, you know. Like for me, I wasn't very good with defense, and I was, you know, a bit of a black hole. Never saw a shot I didn't like, but you know, my role on the team was to score, and my sister was amazing on defense, and when we played, we practiced with each other, you know, during practice, like Coach would put us on each other, and there were times because her defense was so good, and we're both very strong, and like we would fight and foul each other, and then the whole team would have to run while we stood in the middle, and it was horrifying. But you know, I mean, she was competitive too, and she pushed me. But it was nice to be able to, you know, be in the game with her. You know, I got to play 3 years with her, and I don't know if you've ever the show Wonder Twins, or I think it's called Wonder Twins, and we would do that thing where you do the form of, you know, whatever, and we'd do like the fist bump, and we did fist bump before fist bump was cool on the court, and it was just, you know, it was really a lot of good memories, When I was playing, you know, I got injured, of course, you know, my last year was playing basketball, and I ended up having to sit out. I missed 13 games my last season, but you know, I never was very good at listen to your body. You know, I always wanted to push through, and it was hard for me, you know, when I got hurt and had to stop, and it was hard for me when I had to stop playing, because part of it, when you're an athlete, you know, you have times when, you know, you're walking down the street and it's like people are high-fiving you, or, you know, you're in the newspaper, and there's a constant flow of kind of validation and inflow of you know, relationship things, and when you stop playing, you know, when you're finished, you feel good about your experiences, but there's this like gap in your life that used to be filled with, you know, newspaper articles and compliments and high fives, and you know, when I was living in Georgia, and I was, you know, sort of still dealing with that loss, I guess it's a loss, but I found out that I was going to be inducted into the Lone Star Hall of Honors, and that was really, like, it sort of helped me in a way to sort of let go of that whole, it's like I was able to close the chapter. And right before I found out, actually, right before I found out about the Lone Star Conference, I found out that I was going to have my hip replaced because it was just destroyed from years of abuse and not eating enough vegetables. Children, eat your vegetables, it's very important. So, you know, and it's sort of like to be faced with the fact that, you know, I can't play pickup games anymore. I'm not allowed to run, not allowed to jump. I have this hip now that I have to, you know, I have to be careful. And so I knew that I wasn't ever going to play again. So when I came to Portales and for the Lone Star Conference Hall of Honor thing, and then they surprised me by retiring my jerseys as well for volleyball and basketball, which was really, really, it was a total surprise, and it was just an awesome way to end my playing chapter, you know, end that chapter of my life. And it was a very humbling experience because there are so many people that play that, you know, don't ever have that opportunity to, you know, to have teams around them that support them, or you know, have the community that supported me. And I know that all the stuff that I did was largely due to the support system that I had in place with my crazy father, you know, my crazy supportive family, and my Portales family and my teammates, and it was just a really nice way to kind of close that chapter and be okay with not running and jumping and playing anymore. But I really enjoyed it.